Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I'm Helen Noble, celebrant of Surrey and founder of Swan Song. I'm here to give you weekly tips, tricks and insights into all things ceremonial, be that wedding, naming or funeral. This week it's funeral, how to style your funeral and if you can and why you might want to do that. So, styling your funeral, is it a thing? It can be. Post-COVID, I think people are being more mindful about how someone is sent off on their final journey. This week will be my last COVID funeral, I'm hoping, fingers crossed. During the height of the pandemic, most people were tending to go for direct cremation and then thinking about doing something more along the lines of a memorial or a celebration of life as and when everyone could get together. So we are now spring 2023. It doesn't actually look like a spring day today. 2 days ago it was snowing, hence why I still have my ski top on because it was still -2. But the sun is out and the daffodils haven't frozen over, so yuppie. So, as I said, during COVID, a lot of people did the direct cremation, especially if it was a COVID death, with the thought that when the world could open up and we could all come together again, we would do a celebration of life. So I have been very busy doing celebrations of life, which is fabulous because it means that people can come together as they would have wanted at the time, but have come with a little bit of healing in their heart, a lot of trauma, but the trauma has been started to get processed. And having that funeral would have really helped them and the families, the loved ones, the clients. No one regrets doing a funeral, right? No one regrets doing a funeral. You might regret not doing a funeral. You might regret not doing a wake. You might regret, I don't know, you can regret all sorts of stuff, but nobody would regret doing a funeral. But it doesn't need to look like you think it probably has to. A lot of people think, much like a wedding, it all has to happen at the same time. They think, like at a wedding, you have to get married at your wedding. You don't. Like at a funeral, you don't have to do the actual cremation at the funeral. You can separate it out. That has mixed feelings. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of what that might look like and the choices you have, because so many people don't know what they don't know. And when it comes to the point of need, they don't even know what questions to ask because they don't know there's even options. So this is just me letting you know, like my channel is, hints and tips and tricks and some insight into the ceremonial world, but with this week focusing on funerals. So the standard that is recognisable as the norm is either in a crematorium, you're in, the coffin comes in, you stand up, someone says something, you sit down and you crack on. Again, that doesn't have to happen like that. I'll go into that in more detail in a moment. The other type is at a church, same setup, you're in, or the coffin comes in and you stand up, the vicar says some stuff and you sit down, up, down, whatever it needs to be. And then that's that. Or if you're at a burial, again, not that many people, I guess countrywide in the UK, do a burial. And I know because I get weekly emails from celebrants saying, oh, I haven't done a burial. Could you just guide me through it? I do burials more than I do cremations. So burial's my go-to. I prefer a burial because I find it a lot more peaceful and a lot more gentle, and I feel it's a lot more graceful personally. Maybe it's the way I do it, I don't know. But for me, that's why I prefer a burial. And so what people might do there is come to either directly to graveside, do the ceremony there and then do the burial on site without everyone having to move. Or it might be where you are at the burial grounds, there's either a venue of some sorts. I work a lot at Clandon Wood Natural Burial Ground in Dorking in Surrey, Leatherhead. Um, it's just outside Guildford. Um, and they have a pavilion. So we do ceremonies in the pavilion, tend to do ceremonies in the pavilion, and then go down to graveside. Sometimes we start at graveside, come up, and then have the ceremony in the pavilion, because you have a choice. It might be that the actual burial is the really important part for you, and that's where you just want the family. And so it might be that you want to do the burial first, walk up, and then have the ceremony with everyone there, but not with the coffin there, not with the loved one there. Some people would rather do it that way, and some people find that very odd because they're saying, why would we talk about someone when they're not there? It feels like we're talking behind their back. We would rather have the coffin there. And that tends to be the go-to. You tend to be with the coffin at the ceremony, talking about them, seeing them off, witnessing their story, and then you would do the cremation or you would do the burial. But you don't have to. You can mix it up. You can do it the other way and then the ceremony. You can also do it in 2 different places. So like I said at the beginning with a church, it might be you're having the coffin in and having the ceremony in the church, but probably more often than not, the churchyards are pretty full. And I'd say, so I've been a celebrant for 11 years and I've done 2 church graveyards, 2 church burials in 11 years. So it's really, really unusual. Most of the time, it's either in the council one, the municipal one, which is like the mass cemetery for the area, for the county, or other times, again, once for burial, once for interment of ashes, have I done it on private land, i.e. it's the farmers, and I met the farmer and the farmer was like, that is my mound, that is where I'm going. And so I'm like, sure, but you need to put it on the deeds of the house, you need to let everybody know, because otherwise you end up with oh my God, there's a body under the patio. So you must put it on the deeds of the house if you are going to have an interment on private property. Just gonna let that sit, because people might then be going, I can get buried at home. Yes, you can, in the UK. Don't know about the rest of the world. It is a bit of a palaver. It's not the easy option. It does affect things like the house sale later on in someone else's life, not your own, someone else's life. But it is absolutely possible. And I have done it, and you can do it. But it does need to go via the council and the land registry, and it does need to go onto the deeds of the house so that you don't end up with the next owners having a nasty surprise if they want to build an extension, that kind of thing. But it is possible. That might be a massive game changer for you. It might be you've got a family estate out in the country, it's been in the family for decades, no one's going anywhere, there is a mausoleum, and you're going to add yourself to it as and when the time comes. You still can. So hopefully that's some good news for some people. With interment of ashes, again, just to clarify, an interment is the burial of. So it can be an interment of a coffin and a body, an interment of ashes. But either way, you are doing an interment or a burial. Same word, Latin, modern. Different places use different things. The crematorium by me calls everything a burial. I tend to call everything an interment if you're interring, because it's a burial. So just watch the language, and if you are slightly puzzled, do question it, because there are usually 2 words for the same thing. A bit like flowers. There's the Latin, there's the modern. The other ways you can do it, and I have done this plenty of times, is to hire a venue that has nothing to do with the creme or the church, but has everything to do with the person. So I've done it at the Royal Legion, so the poppies. Done lots of those, had the standard, which is the flag, had march, had bugles, done a lot. I've done it in people's local pub because they were either the landlord or they just loved it and they went every Sunday for a roast. And so the family have hired out the pub for the ceremony. Again, it can be with the coffin before the funeral, or it can be post the cremation if you want to do it with the ashes. It actually comes down to the landlord's permission. If you want to do a funeral in a special place, a place that means something to yourself or the deceased, if that isn't yourself, as long as the person that owns it says it's okay, then it's absolutely okay. Um, and that might be a game changer because a lot of people, especially from the pandemic, going to a crematorium doesn't tend to send out happy vibes. Um, the worst thing you think could have happened has happened. Your loved one has died. It's going to be horrific. Even if people say those awful things like, well, they're out of misery now, all that kind of stuff. Whatever that is, it's still awful when your loved one dies. Of course it is. So for me, it's about making the uncomfortable as possible. And if that means we split the cremation to the ceremony or the ceremony to the burial or the location of one to the other, we can do that. So that's my big message for you guys today. You don't have to do it all at once. Much like the wedding head, you don't have to do it all at once. You can have a direct cremation and then do a ceremony after. You can have a ceremony and then the family go off to either the crematorium or graveside. Or you could give it more gap. Like I was saying, with the pandemic, I've got a funeral coming up and their loved one actually died 2 years ago. But this is now the first time with the airways and everyone else not feeling sick or other people dying where they've actually been able to come together. So there's a lot to hold in the room. So finding a room, finding a venue, finding a space that is comfortable is really important and something that you are able to do. So here's me saying all that information so that you realise you have a choice. You have so much choice. So do embrace it. All right, that's my phone going off. Take care, lots of love. I'll see you next week for all things ceremony. Bye for now.